All right, guys. So, topic we haven't really ever discussed before, which is weird because I think by the time we get through this podcast, I think everyone's gonna be like, "Yeah, that's a pretty important one." Everyone likes to talk about being evidence based. Well, not everyone. The good ones do. Evidence based, data driven, and like some of the most important data you can collect to see how your little personal experiment is going to be your progress pictures. Um, it's something that it shocks me, right? Because the means to do so is so widely available today. Whereas, like, when we started, I know for me, it's like, hey, hit up my buddy. It's like, can you bring your digital camera to the gym? And it was like this big boxy thing that could hold like 8 pictures. Um, so it's there, but like, people don't necessarily leverage the way we like them to do so. So I guess before we kind of break this topic down, do you guys remember your first set of progress pictures you ever took?
Yes.
I do.
Mine was just in an apartment that I had, and it was my first digital camera, and I wasn't lean, but the lighting made me look leaner than it actually was. Um but yeah, it was not super informative. I'll have to send it to you after this. It's fun to look back on. I think I was doing a hands clasp most muscular.
The
And
one where you pull
I think
your
that was
ab
the
fat
only one.
down, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
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 yeah.
you push it down, so it
It's like
so
the inverse of if you have breasts, right? Breasts, like girls have to kind of
Ye
lift up themselves.
yeah,
They're the abs, and like for dudes, they go like,
yeah,
like let me
exactly,
yank it
exactly.
down. It's
No,
great.
it was, yeah. But yeah, I remember. It was probably 2008, 2009, in that area.
Was it eye opening in any way, or not really?
Yeah, at the time, I mean, now it's even more eye-opening because this was, like, right at the end of my 3-year-long dreamer's bulk, you know? So it was like at the end of that, like, now I look back at it, I'm like, "Wow, I can't believe I got up to 230," like, that was completely unnecessary, but it's fun to look back on, it's like, yeah, it was a mistake at the time, but you learn from it, and it's good to have that reminder, I think.
How about you, Brad? You use Polaroids given the age discrepancy, right?
No, not quite, but almost. Um, no, it was I remember vividly because, like, my first delve into bodybuilding was in 2001. You remember the transformations were real big back then, the Bill Phillips before and after transformations, and AST at the time, they had a transformation just like that, and so the only pictures I took were the before and after, you know? I had to take, like, 3 or 4 photos and hold up the newspaper with the
The
date, and
newspaper,
all that
yeah.
kinda good stuff. Yep, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so I did that. It was my first digital camera. I remember every time you zoomed, you could hear it in the audio of the camera. It'd go, "Dee, dee," like that, you know? But then, yeah, then the following 2 years, 2003 was when I did my first bodybuilding competition, and my coach was, Skip LaCour, and he would take photos every week. Like, he would go to the park, get his tripod and his camera, and he would go there every week, and he would take all of his progress photos, and he would use it for practicing his posing as well. So, naturally, if coach does that, that's what I'm gonna do. So I, got invested in the little tripod for my camera and getting the spare bedroom where the best lighting was, or what I thought at the time was the best lighting. We'll talk about that later too. And yeah, every week I would do my progress photos and practice my posing and make adjustments and draw little pictures and lines to make sure that I was, taking advantage of the best poses possible.
All right, so you did it at home, not next to the children's seesaw like Skip.
No.
If Skip's listening for some reason, shout outs to
Yeah.
Skip.
Shout out to Skip.
He's cool dude, cool
Yeah.
dude.
I didn't know
Uh,
you were actually coached by Skip, Brad, early on
Well,
in your
I say
career.
coached in a relatively loose term. We met
Okay.
up I think once or twice on a phone call.
Oh,
But
still. That's
otherwise
cool.
I just kind of followed what he put out on his journals, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that was the whole I guess, initiation of this weird, what seems like vain, taking pictures of ourselves every week to make sure we're making progress and, doing our posing the right way.
Yeah.
See, mine's were actually like I had to go to Walgreens and get them developed. Uh, the stuff those people probably saw, right? Like not just those, but uh, it was for the bodybuilding.com teen web competition. And I was 19 at the time. Lane Norton was in it. Uh, Sean, last name I'm not going to try to pronounce, starts with an N, but he's still around. Like he was in there too. A lot of, I think Derek Charleboy was in it as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was the teen web comp. You took all your mandatories and then you posted it up on the forums. And like for me, I remember I bulked into that comp because track season was not going to happen. But I was like, I just peaked too early with my shape, stress fracture in my foot. I'm like, I'm not running this year. So I just bulk. And I went from like my high 130s body weight to like the 160s and I guess relatively lean. But I remember those pictures. I was like, oh, I thought I'd be like crazy, crazy lean because you don't know until you know. And remember, I did baby oil. I did usually shorts, and I just rolled up. And I had this girl that I was seeing at the time take my pictures, and she thought it was like the weirdest thing. But whatever. Um, and yeah, overall, it was just very. I remember seeing all these guys that had specialized in like in body, like Lane, Sean, they all had, and um, and then I see mines, and I'm like, oh, I just look like, I guess, like an athlete hitting these poses. So my skill level wasn't where it needed to be for the poses. I think that was the first time I ran through the like all the mandatories. And then just like in regards to like muscle, I was missing things that athletes generally miss, like my lats, uh, certain segments of my chest. It was very, very eye opening, and but I saw the value in it because I really thought, especially when you go to like just a regular gym and not a whole lot of people there bodybuild, like you feel like, man, like I'm on the fast track, and then you compare it to other guys around your age. I remember I was like, oh shoot, like this is where I need to decide if I want to specialize in this or not. So it definitely changed the course of my athletics and my bodybuilding. From that point on, I'm like, I never want to look that way again. This was very underwhelming. Let's just go all in. But yeah, it was a pain in the butt. Took me a few days to get the pictures. I was super excited. Of course, underwhelmed by the time I saw them. And now it's like, people, y'all have like no excuses. Like let's get with it. So one thing I said before we started the podcast, it seems like people, I think they develop the wrong skill set first. And what I mean by that is people get really good early on, especially the kiddos out there. And I'm not hating. I think it's actually a great thing at the end to just photograph your art project like from all these angles and ways and manners that like really present what I guess you want to highlight. But they develop that side first, the social media friendly way of taking pics. Um, but they never, or at least it's very delayed, take those progress pictures that, okay, this is what's really going to ultimately, kind of like it did for me, like change the trajectory of what you do next with your bodybuilding. Just a really good audit of what is working and what is it, when what is working. So I guess on that topic, do you guys want to expand a little bit on how you guys developed your preferences for, because we look at data all day, right? And it's very important data. So, um, yeah, Brian, like how do you do it with yourself and your people?
Well, to be very transparent, I'm not a huge fan of, like, for me, like I'm not somebody who takes progress photos very often. Which also makes it a little bit nicer to look back on because there's enough time that's passed to really assess differences. But, for most of the people that I work with, prep athletes weekly, biweekly athletes, maybe once every other check-in, depending on what their goal is. But it used to be, like I think everybody's gone through that kind of progression where they pick the favorable lighting that it's like, oh, I like that gym because the lighting's good. I always feel big when I train there, and that's fine. Like you said, that's almost like a separate category than a progress photo. So then it sort of, after I acknowledge that, okay, let's at least make the conditions consistent, and like same background, same room. The lighting wasn't necessarily as big of a, like, it could still be the half natty side lighting at that point, but at least it was consistent. But over time, you realize like any angle that's going to cast significant shadows can be pretty misleading, especially if you're using natural light and there's, it's hard to replicate the exact same lighting depending on the season and everything. And um so then it sort of transitioned to, okay, let's put the camera between a natural light source and myself. That way the light is shining directly in, it's not casting many shadows at all. And that was good, but there was still some variation in terms of, you know, the lighting on a given day. And so eventually I like the idea of the ring light. I've used like the natural light window thing probably the most. But as more people are getting those lights, for variety of reasons, content creation, whatever, um, that seems to be the most predictable. And sometimes even just like a flash, similar lighting and just use the flash on your camera from straight on can kind of mimic a similar environment each time. So um yeah, I think that's sort of the evolution of it for me. And one thing I did want to bring up, because I think a common counterpoint to this is, why do you want the least favorable lighting? Like, why not? You could at least take them and you'll still be comparing apples to apples in favorable conditions. But it does seem that there comes a point in a prep, especially where the leaner you get, it's not as indicative in that favorable lighting. So there's almost like diminishing returns. There's like this decreased ability to assess differences in those conditions. Um, so you could be 90% in good lighting, then get to 100% and maybe look pretty similar in good lighting still. So it depends on the the direction of the light and everything. But I do think it's much easier and honest to assess changes with light directly facing you.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, Brian, and the same thing with myself. I rarely use photos on myself until I'm like in the thick of a fat loss phase, or like I was last year, like in the thick of prep, but just to kind of echo, I guess, what Alberto talks about in the Physique photo guide on 3DMJ Vault. You want to check that out? There's a little link down there down below, but it's a great course, and I do a lot of what Alberto outlines in there. When you're talking about an off-season athlete and they're going through their bulking phase, I don't really care what the conditions are. I just need to see you. Get me pictures, get me video, give me screenshots from a video, and let's get a look at you either every 8 to 12 weeks, or B, when we make certain milestones. So like, we were 188 and now we're 195, and if that's taken a good 8 to 12 weeks, which it usually does, one of those two things, meet a milestone or every 8 to 12 weeks, and that's more for your, I guess, intermediate and advanced athletes, where changes are going to happen very, very slowly. When you're talking your novices and your early intermediates, yeah, we can probably get away with about a little more frequency, about every 4 to 6 weeks. And again, when there's milestones, I'm big on milestones. If we're bulking, and especially like, guys for the I guess the ectomorphs, right? It's the ectomorphs that have a hard time gaining weight, right? Those are important milestones. We've been working hard to get to 190 or whatever, and we finally made it, and we're there for 2 or 3 weeks. Let's capture this. Let's get this little moment in time, right? Because that's what these really are. Is they're little moments in time, and we're going to compare these, down the road. So that's kind of our off-season athletes, right? And if we're just doing a cut every couple of weeks, don't have to do it every week, in my opinion. Again, if it's just a cut that, we're trying to get ready for, I don't know, a photo shoot or a wedding or some sort of a, family reunion, class reunion event, that we're going to be getting ready for. Every couple of weeks, again, just get me the photos. Let's not think too much about it. Maybe as we get a little bit closer, we'll start thinking light source camera subject, you know what I mean? But let's just get the photos every couple of weeks. And that kind of goes for the early phase competitive bodybuilders. And when we're 24, 28, 20 weeks out, we don't have to be too particular. Just get me the photos, especially when we're trying to work on posing at that point, right? At that point there, we're not going to assess flatness and fullness and how you look and all that kind of stuff. We need to get your photos more so for anything so we can teach you how to pose, But then, then we're going to start getting meticulous as I did, when we're about between 5 and 8 weeks out from the bodybuilding competition. And for me, that's the one I kind of like the natural light because my eye is not quite as good as your guys's when it comes to evaluating flatness versus fullness. It's getting better, but I like natural light, kind of that half natty lighting with a dark background. That's another kind of an important thing. When you're half naked and you're pale, don't get in front of a white background. Yes, it is so hard to you need that contrasting from the outside of the skin layer to the background. And so it doesn't have to be black, but at least brown. Last year I used like a dark burgundy one, and make it easy. Like I just leave a sheet hanging behind my door, tacked up to the wall. When I'm taking my progress photos, I shut the door and move the sheet across and there's my dark background, right? But I really like that because, again, I like to see, okay, let's purposely make this person flat. Let's go through a digging phase and maybe go 12 or 14 days in a row, all low days, and get pictures, right? Good lighting, something that kind of shows you a little bit like you might look on the bodybuilding stage, and it helps me to kind of assess what flatness looks like on you. And then, probably get a good kind of a mock peak, I guess you might say, where we get some high days in there, maybe a couple purposeful high carb days, but in the same conditions, good lighting, dark background in the posing trunks. Let's get you up in front of the camera so that we can see, okay, how do you fill out? Where are those areas where we really see things pop or we see, fullness really happen and more definition than when you were flat and blurry. So yeah, that's kind of the spectrum of kind of how I like to see progress fix from our deep off-season bodybuilder / just wanting to get started, in their journey. And then of course, all the way down to, we're talking weeks out from a competition.
Yeah, kind of like you guys. I think how frequently it depends, right, on the context of the situation. Like off season for me, it's once we've seen enough objective progress in the training, it's like, okay, I think we've spurted pretty well here. The last 4 months have been good. Let's see what sort of effect this training is having on your physique. And it's crazy because between those 2 points, like between the progress pictures, what I'm actually analyzing more is probably, again, what's on the spreadsheet in regards to the numbers of the lifts, primarily, not necessarily the body weight, I think, as much as like people think. Although, usually there's some sort of assignment tied to that. Uh, and then I'm probably analyzing more training footage than anything else, just to make sure that, because a person could write something on the spreadsheet, but it's like, all right, so I don't know, you've added 40 pounds on your bench press. Let's see what that looks like, just to make sure that, hey, it looks exactly the way it did, just heavier now, right? So once we accumulate enough of that, it's like, all right, I'm curious, let's see what this looks like. And I think that puts people at ease because they get to work a lot more and actually split hairs, like where it matters the most. Like I remind athletes of, especially like late intermediate, early advanced folks. I'm like, so when did you make the most visual progress? go back in your bodybuilding journey, usually it was after these big changes in performance levels, right? Like when your bench press went from 225/4/5 to, okay, now it's 315/4/5, let's say. It's a big bench press. You saw huge chunks of progress in your physique. You saw that manifest in your physique. The rules are still the same now. It's just a little slower. So that's what we should be primarily focused on. So with off season, it's usually end of a block or as I see fit, just to ensure that this is doing what I think it's doing. And then fat loss. Um, I think early on you can probably rely on the scale a little bit more. But then usually somewhere in the middle or that last third of the fat loss phase, you probably want to leverage progress pictures a little bit more because sometimes the scale won't agree. And this is where you have to go to the visual data. And of course, contest prep, it's literally, it's every week. Um, I think the only difference, or maybe you guys do this anyway, do this too, is I like video as opposed to, um, pictures just because posing's hard and sometimes like I don't know little changes in let's just say they're hitting a back double bicep can give them credit that they haven't earned yet or the other way around too. So usually video it's against a bunch of moments clustered together. I feel like I can pick up on a whole lot more. um but but usually I mean I'm fine with just pick the screenshot that's the most consistent. um What else? I'm big on the same attire as well because um, I mean that matters. I think especially with women in their tops, like you know how sports bras are sometimes. Like it's like I have lats in this one, and in this one I don't have lats. So I like a simple like just like two-piece simple string. I don't know the terminology for that. Perfect. So now we have the same material in the way every single time. Um, I don't think males need to wear like I think posing trunks if you don't want to, because man, that could be a little discouraging, especially in the off season. But still, I like to see like some like glute and upper hamstring in the top of the quads when you're hitting your poses. And in regards to poses, and again, we go through all of this in much more detail in my course, the Physique Photo Guide. Um, I just like the front and back relax because you can teach those to just about anyone. There's a lot more consistency in those poses. Like once you learn to hit those, like all of us here, we ain't hit those poses. Like we hit them every few months, maybe, right? But it's very easy to just once you learn it, you learn it. Very different from side poses, back poses, where certain muscles are expanding and contracting, whereas like the front and back relax, it's really just like, hey, just spread out, create tension in your legs, and like you're golden. So um, even a lot of my athletes that don't necessarily have those poses in their mandatories in the off season, just to make it simple, unless they really like to pose, that's exactly what we'll hit. Um, but yeah, it's just it's wild to me that people won't take the time to learn how to take progress pictures still. Like our first batch of applicants usually like you see the progress pictures and quite often I'd be like, hey, can you just like retake that, man? Because it's like it's literally like bathroom, like that's what they're doing. I'm like, I can't do much with that. Like I need to see the whole situation. Um, yeah, but I think what really comes in handy again is going to be like during fat loss phases. And again, it's startling because people will spend all this money on like getting DEXA scans, right? Like things of that nature because they want this numerical data. And it's like, no, but at the end, what you're aiming for is like, this subjective look, right? And like, this is what we're going to rely on, not a body fat goal or, whether it's DEXA calipers, like this is where ultimately, um, you will figure out whether or not you have achieved your objective. So fat loss phase, it saves me a lot of adjustments. I'll tell you that much because quite often the scale is not moving, especially with women. But especially if we do video, it's like, yo, look at your quad. Like it flickered like right down the middle. And we did not have that last week. which is great, right? Because if we can save ourselves a few adjustments during a fat loss phase, usually that lends itself to a better time and a better product. So yeah, super important, the progress pictures. Um, so is Instagram stuff, absolutely. As a matter of fact, um, there's a place in my heart because we talk about consistency, like in the morning, lighting, attire. I think when you're gaining, there's a time and a place for like massive pump in the gym progress pictures because they can be a little telling, right? Because sometimes when you are a little softer, just having that good blood flow everywhere, like just it tells you that hey, we are on the right track. Like I think we've all taken pictures like that where yeah, we're not in our best shape, but this pump, this body weight, or like okay, like yeah, this is pretty assuring.
Hey, 3DMJers. Andrea Valdez here, popping in to let you know that all the helpful information that you're hearing in this episode is organized and expanded on within Coach Alberto's Physique Photo Guide video course. As you've been hearing, this is a crucial point of data collection for bodybuilders and recreational physique athletes who want to monitor their progress over time for shows or personal progress. Inside the Physique Photo Guide, Alberto includes chapters about camera and lighting equipment, what type of attire you should be wearing, how to set up the shots and angles, what poses to use for your images or videos, and a whole lot more. You can get the Physique Photo Guide along with all of our other video courses inside one complete bodybuilding learning academy at 3dmjvault.com. Again, that's 3dmjvault.com to get instant access. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the rest of the show.
With contest prep, with fat loss phases, it's going to become increasingly more important to rely on that subjective data. And I think one thing that people overlook is that every pound of body fat you lose, inside 8 weeks out, that's going to have a significantly larger visual impact than the pound before that. It's just a larger relative contribution. So it seems kind of silly sometimes for people, okay, I take progress photos every week, at the end of prep, but it really, there can be some significant changes where, years can pass in off-season shape and you might not be totally confident off photos alone. Like if I gained an appreciable amount of muscle mass in the last year or two, and then it becomes very evident once you diet back down. But I think it just is important to point out how impactful a week can be in terms of a visual look the leaner you get. The other thing is, I think even outside of that situation, photos can still be helpful. And, I had an athlete a couple of years ago who came to us and, basically every interaction that we had, communication, gave me the impression like early to mid intermediate. And so he wanted to do a gaining phase. He sent me his photos, kind of that ectomorphic body type a little bit. And so, I was okay with gaining at a somewhat assertive rate, over 1% a month. I was okay with. And so we did that, and then he came back, 8 weeks later, and he was gaining pretty quickly. And so if I were to just look at objective numerical data and, off, the quote unquote evidence-based recommendations for, appropriate rate of gain for training status, it would appear that he was gaining too quickly. And so the natural thing to do there, if you're, numerically data driven, is to pull back and, decrease the degree of the surplus. But we got some photos, and his conditioning was the same as it was before. Like he was recomping or gaining very minimal amounts of body fat, and his scale weight was coming up. So I think there's times, at least as a coach, where the training age might not be as far down the line as maybe you realize. And I think a lot of people, they're doing things inefficiently out of the gate, and that can contribute. And some people just respond very favorable to training. I mean, there's intermediate to advanced level lifters that probably can gain a little bit more assertively, and a higher, or I should say a lower proportion of that will be body fat than someone else. So it should be used in conjunction year round, really. And I should heed my own advice there, because I'm not a huge fan of off season.
You and me both.
Yeah, but the video thing, I do find video to be helpful. I agree with that as well. And from the athlete perspective, it's like, I think we've all probably taken progress photos before. It's like, oh, I could hit that front relaxed better, or I could do this, and you're tinkering with it, setting the timer. Whereas on video, you can kind of just adjust on the fly, and then that data will be there. So I think it saves time on the athlete side. I know it does for me.
Yeah, the progress pictures, the guys with the clicker in their mouth.
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, you're working way too hard to get what you want here.
Yeah. I didn't know what that was for like 3 years. Like, is this I had no clue.
Yeah, I can expand on both of those things. I've kind of gone 180 with the video thing. In fact, I think you and I were on the same podcast, Berto, at some point where we were talking we weren't talking about progress photos, but I remember you saying how much you liked video, and I was just like, just get me pictures, because sometimes getting people to get you progress photos is like pulling teeth sometimes, with the exception of our bodybuilders and our physique competitors, right? But yeah, I've kind of done a 180 on that too, because I remember very vividly consulting with a coach on a client that he was coaching, and he suspected that the client was over dieting. And so he showed me a couple videos of this particular client. And keep in mind, I just told you guys and confided in you that I'm getting better, but I'm not as skilled as you guys when it comes to detecting flatness versus fullness, right? So here, this client of his that I had never seen before, he shows me a video, and as the kid's walking away from the camera to set up his first pose, I can see glute striations, and he could not get glute striations to show up in his progress photos and in his videos to save his life. And immediately I was like, you know what? Look at right there. He's shredded. He's just flat. And that was like the first time that I was able to assess somebody with regard to being flat without ever having any history or any interaction with them before. And it was all because of that video. And it's because he wasn't even posing. He was walking away from the camera to go get into his pose that I was able to recognize that. From that moment on, I'm like, man, Berto sold me. I want video, and I'm going to do what I can to make it easier on the client. Like you said, Berto, don't use the clicker. Just put the thing on and get in front of it and go. And then just send me the video, because I can do screenshots, and I can put grab the screenshots that I want and arrange them in my spreadsheet how I want them to be arranged. But yeah, I kind of found out with my last competition prep, the difference between video after you upload it to YouTube and video that you actually get a screenshot from, dramatically different in terms of quality. And a lot of my bodybuilders that are very close to competition, I actually want them in good lighting, and I want them to get the screenshots from the video, because I don't know about you guys, but when I see myself all washed out and I'm like 5 weeks out from a competition, it gets kind of discouraging and it gets inside my head. Thank goodness Jeff was there overseeing me, because I would have probably done things that did not need to be done had he not said, yeah, let's just get the screenshots from there and put those in the spreadsheet instead of sending me the YouTube link, So yeah, that's kind of one thing that you sold me on, Berto, is like, let's get the video, and at some point, let's not upload it to YouTube and send me the link. Take the time. It's a quick video. Get me the screenshots. You can dial that thing back and forth to get it dialed in just at that perfect pose that you wanted. Screenshot it, put it on the spreadsheet. Let's go from there, right? And then, yeah, I really like you talking about what I wrote down here, Brian, numbers, quote unquote, fat versus visual, quote unquote, fat. Because that's big, especially for my off-season bodybuilders. Because I have this kind of unwritten rule with a lot of my bodybuilders that if they're going to compete again and they want to get the most out of a short off season, which, I mean, let's face it, sometimes 2 years is a pretty short off season, and if they've never been like training and in a hot streak and they've never been quote unquote fat, I kind of want to get them there. I kind of want those abs to be gone. I kind of want things to be a little bit soft, all while still training, right? And if you're looking numerically, oh, wow, this person's never been above 180 and now they're 189. You might think to yourself, we're there, But many, many times, like you said, Brian, let's get photos. Let's see what that looks like on the bodybuilder. Wow, I still see abs. I still see obliques, and you're 189. Let's go a little more. Let's get 192. Let's get 193. Then let's see what that looks like, all while training, under a hot streak or the right environment or whatever is appropriate for that off-season bodybuilder. But yeah, there's a big difference between numbers fat and visual fat. Now, I'm not going to do that to our more seasoned athletes where, do they really need to get that fat in the off season? It's probably arguable, but I'm less likely in that condition to say, all right, we got a competition coming up here in about 18 months. Let's get really, really soft, Maybe we'll have a little bit more control, but all the more reason why let's not go by the numbers only. Let's also go by the pictures. And I've kind of gotten to be a little bit more, I'm not going to say reliant, but I like to use the data from measurements, the little measurements of the biceps and the chest and having little landmarks that I get measurements on, kind of along with the pictures. But we'll save that for another podcast because that's something that is a totally different metric to to go by, than the visual ones.
On that note, I guess a good rule to have, and I'm sure you guys have done this with athletes, is like as soon as you get the data I want, the pictures or the video, it's like put them away. Like don't look at them immediately. Like I know that even with my own stuff, I need probably a day or two to like just actually really be able to analyze those objectively. As long as I just look, okay, I kind of executed those poses the way I wanted to. All right, let's put them away, and then I'll come back to that later. So sometimes later that day, sometimes a few days later, but I do need some time. And a lot of my athletes do it that way. They're just like, and they know this, they're just like, I'm just going to send it to you. I'm not going to look at it. You tell me what you think. But yeah, that is the thing about that lighting. It's that it's very, the lighting we urge people to use. It's, I guess it's not pessimistic. It's just very, it's like, if something is there, it's because it's like really there. Right. Whereas with whether it's overhead or side lighting, you could get credit for a lot of things that aren't necessarily there. Remember my first bodybuilding show, the last update that I put on the forums at the time was a picture with the side lighting, and I was all of like 190 pounds. And because the lighting was coming from the side, it gave me all this credit for separated quads that I didn't really have. I mean, like, Brian, your face right now, it's a great example of that. Like, you have shadow on one side, right? And there's certain things that are popping out more than others. And yeah, it humbled me because I got under those stage lights and I'm like, oh wow, like these lights are designed to see nothing but the truth, basically. So yeah, especially with competitive athletes, it's like, hey, if you think that shows that there's a little bit of, guess, tricep striation, guess what? It's like probably 100% there. And even for the people who maybe don't compete, like if you look a little, this area that you're really focusing on, say you want abs for the first time this summer, and you can kind of see the ab cage and some sort of separation, I guarantee you if you get under like just normal outside lighting where it's kind of hitting you from all angles, because we're not all facing, I don't know, north the whole day, we're animated, we're moving, it's going to look like really, really good. And you're going to get all sorts of oohs and ahs and like, wow, look at those abs, dude. So yeah, I like that lighting because if there is something that's kind of there, it's 100% going to be there for whatever your goal might be, whether it's like, Cancun, photo shoot or the stage. Like if we can get you to look more or less the way you want to look under that environment, um, rest assured, it's like, guess what? You are going to be uh, golden for like what specifically we're training for. But that's a big thing with like the competitive bodybuilders. Like I already know, like if you're taking a bunch of side lighting pictures or the overhead, like 9 times out of 10, like that dude's not showing up in shape. And that's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. Those pictures are fun, but I mean, as we discussed, like they have a time and a place. Like it's cool to hype yourself up. It's cool to play with like different lighting because at the end, this is kind of your like art project. I go to 2 gyms that have these really elaborate posing rooms, and I think it's great, like, especially when I see like young people like in there. And I think to a lot of the boomers, they kind of look at them and they're like, they're so like into themselves and they ain't got no muscle, kid. And I'm like, no, it's like this is actually pretty cool. They're learning to appreciate what it is that they've built, and they're playing with like different ways to showcase their art. So and I think that skill is a little bit harder than what it is that we're trying to do for bodybuilding specific training, right? Like we've all seen our guys that take very good progress pictures, like their stuff is always clean just the way you wanted. And they try to take something for the gram and you're like, bro, that's like, like that's not what you think it is. Um, so this one's real easy. You earn it. You never forget it. Like I still think about 90% of my picture taking is like the fun picture taking. Because it is cool to celebrate and just, yeah, just do the artsy part of bodybuilding. But I have a very solid foundation when it comes to, I guess, the stuff that's going to make that and everything else look better. That sort of data extraction.
Yeah, I look at it sort of like a early on in a diet, overhead lighting, it's always going to make you look better. So if that keeps you motivated, it's like I think there's a time and place for that.
Absolutely.
But I also think it's ironic because it doesn't always make you look better. Like if there's significant shadows, like you said, if somebody's got tricep striations in harsh lighting, then they're peeled, But in like dramatic downlighting where there's a lot of shadows, it might hide some of that detail. So I think there's sort of a sweet spot there in terms of like you want the lighting that achieves the objective that you're after. And early on, maybe it is like, okay, they've lost 10 pounds, let them get some Instagram photos and, kind of fill their tank with motivation. And then when it comes time for that honest lighting, like we don't need 100% honest lighting when somebody's 25 pounds over stage weight. It's not going to be as much of a visual difference, but I still think it's nice from a consistency perspective. Like it's kind of a cool, scrapbook to look back on, from a prep, seeing like week to week in the same lighting. So I think it's more like, okay, this is something you can take with you, nice souvenir from prep that you can look back on, and kind of can inform you a bit for future preps. But yeah, the good lighting sometimes works against you at the end of prep. Like some of my favorite bodybuilding photos of all time are, somebody who's pale but just shredded, it's got harsh lighting. You can just tell that like they are disgustingly conditioned, and so that's like the look you want to go for.
You can also make yourself, especially if you're really early into your prep or like you're starting that, what we call the prep positioning diet, right? Where you're really heavy and your whole point is to get from really heavy down to, respectable 10 to 12%, away from stage weight. If you get in really good lighting, you're going to see every little fat fold, fat roll, little skin fold, just like you see when you're really disgustingly conditioned, So I think that that's also kind of something to just be aware of is if you try to get in like the best kind of side lighting, natural lighting when you're quote unquote fat, it's going to show every little bit of fatness that you've got. So you might actually want to have something that is a little bit more from the ring, when you're in that kind of a condition. So otherwise you might get discouraged.
Yeah, something you brought up, Brian. There's pros and cons to like every form of lighting, right? Like the top lighting, like what that does is like you could see abs and chest real well. Basically, muscle groups where the separation is like running um, uh, parallel to the ground. So you'll get a lot of abs. You'll get your pecs, maybe some indents in the delt, but like your lower body suffers because that's mostly a lot of like vertical lines, and it's the other way around. And I think that's why that one's probably a little bit more deadlier for competitors because usually all divisions are like about like who's got their legs in, like regardless, right? Like even like especially with women, like when they walk on stage, like if you see flickering quads with every step, you're like, oh, once they set into their pose, this is probably going to look right. So the side lighting is just when it comes to lower body separation, it enhances that beyond what it like absolutely is. Um, and again, going back to the lighting we want people to use, at least for the data collection. Um, I don't know. I'd rather know the truth like before I get on stage as opposed to the way we've all done it, where it's like we didn't find out until we saw the pictures afterwards, and you're like, oh, geez, like that was it. Like that's it looks nothing like that half natty lighting picture I took 4 weeks out from the show. Um, so yeah, especially for competitors.
I got a couple things that I wanted to touch on that you talked about earlier, Bert, and just the obvious yet sometimes resistant, I guess, trait of the importance of your videos and your progress photos. We're in bodybuilding, we're not trying to get up on stage and lift the most weight, right? Or at least lift who can lift the most weight on that particular day. It's all visual. And it seems obvious, but I just want to kind of maybe even make it more obvious that it is a visual sport. And you need to get little snapshots in time of how you look visually on a fairly regular basis. Because ultimately when we get up on stage, it's a subjective sport based on what a person sees, right? Yeah, it's if it's a visual. Well, let's even back it up to other sports, right? My son just sent me a video clip. He's the defensive end at Rocky Mountain College, and he sent me a video clip. They're way from their start of their competitive season, but they're already starting their one-on-ones against the offensive lineman, right? And he's working these drills against an offensive lineman to make him a better defensive lineman when it comes time to actually play the game. If you're a bodybuilder, yeah, we need the physical training. We need to lift the loads and get the RIRs and the reps and all that kind of good stuff. But if you're not visually looking at yourself in a visual sport, you're really no different than my son spending all the time in the gym and then not getting any reps on the field, and not getting any reps against his opponents who are the offensive linemen, right? Without photos, you're really not even making the most out of your sport. You're not actually putting yourself against what is our sport, and that's the visual changes and the visual appearance of how you're looking. So, I think that's probably important to kind of drive home when you mentioned earlier, Alberto, about how important progress photos are. We are in a visual sport. You're going to need to see yourself. And as much as Brian and I talked about that, we don't take a lot of off-season photos of ourselves. You can be rest assured that there's going to be a point in time where we're going to be taking more regular photos since we are in a visual sport.
Yeah. Most people in prep probably take more photos than they need by the end. That they're doing, or they're physique checking multiple times a day, which, that's just kind of not a good thing probably, but it's, you're more dialed into those changes at that point. The only other thing I was going to add is, I've got a couple people that are first time competitors this year. And I think when you're learning to pose, I wish I would have had access to like clear video when I was learning to pose. And when you're in front of a mirror, like the phones nowadays, like their front facing cameras are almost just as good, if not as good. So you can sort of put the phone kind of at about where, the height of the judge's table would be. And you can start to sort of learn like, okay, from their point of view, I can square up more from that vantage point a little bit, and you can practice your transitions. Cause that's one thing, the first time I competed, like I had a general idea. I mean, more than general idea, but I wasn't a great poser still, so, but the transitions were just a complete afterthought for me. So it was, just basically standing up, just kind of shaking things out, like, setting up again. So it was, like that's something that video now, I think there's an easier learning curve for posing because of video and almost using your phone as a mirror as you go.
Yeah, I remember same thing, Brian. Like there was only so much time in these devices, so like I had 60 seconds to get my posing in, and then it's like, whereas like with this, oh, you could do numerous posing rounds, go back and check. You can fill up your phone with all the data you need. But yeah, that was a pain. I think I had 30 seconds of video per the old technology, so I could hit like 8 poses and maybe.
Yeah.
The demographic that I feel kind of has it right when it comes to physique video and posing and getting the documentation is a lot of the bikini athletes. I really admire sometimes the bikini athletes when they're posting up, they're basically taking videos, which seems like at least once a week, deep in the off season, when they're like 86 weeks from their next competition. They're practicing their presentation, and they're really critical of holding this shoulder just right, so that they've got the width up top, and it seems like they're practicing their craft all the time, I really admire a lot of those athletes. I mean, I'm sure they get made fun of a lot, but at the same time, my son, he's been practicing his moves against the offensive lineman like for years. And that's just like I admire him for really kind of going after his craft. I kind of admire the bikini athletes too for that same reason. I mean, sometimes they're far from their show, and now they're up there walking in their heels up and down their floor and practicing their what do you want to call it, their routine, and some of them they move really well. You can tell that they have really practiced over and over and over again how they're moving their arms, how they're moving this and how they're moving that. I kind of feel like that's one demographic that's like got it right, maybe a little too obsessive, but at the same time, if you're going to be good at something, you got to kind of be obsessive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right, Brad, about the extraction of data in other sports. Like almost every other sport uses film, right? Like, I don't know, if I'm trying to, recruit a high school running back and he's ran for 2,000 yards, and then I see the video and I'm like, oh, okay, well, he was competing in a division with a bunch of plumbers. Like, okay, that makes sense, like moving on. Or I remember like this was way back when again, we didn't have media to show our physiques online. Like it was very complicated scanner at this point. I remember everyone had their stats in their signature on the bodybuilding.com forums. And I just remember looking at them and I'm like, man, I'm so small. This dude, I remember this one dude in particular, his name was Shot. And he was like 5'6", 250. I'm calling you out, brother. And what was a Big Papa Pump? It was Big Papa Pump. I think it was Big Papa Pump because he took my screen name. That's how I became Father Flex, because I needed something similar. So maybe that's why I'm salty. But
was your screen name Big Papa Pump to begin
no,
with?
it was Father Flex. I wanted to be Big Papa Pump like everyone else. Right. So I'm like, oh, it's taken. All right. So I'm Father Flex instead of Papa Pump. But he frequented especially the anabolic forums a lot. And I remember Like he was just like the like alpha male there, like, oh, your cycle's dumb and this and that. And he was like 5'6", 250 pounds. And I'm like, oh my God, what must this guy look like? And then finally it got to the point where we had the means to like post pictures. And all of a sudden there's like 5'6", 240, 250, 20-inch arms, 20 some inch arms. Like this dude takes it with like a freaking waist trainer at the time. And I'm like, this is nothing like what I thought it would be. So I think especially young men, they fall victim to like the stat card, like what is your height, what is your weight, what are the arm measurements, what are your ratios, and it's like, bro, at the end, none of that matters. It's some of the guys with like the best physiques have stats that aren't very impressive at all. But also a lot of those guys happen to really go by the eye test. Like, what's his name? Jeff Rodriguez, one of the most like complete natural physiques that you'll ever see. Like, he didn't really weigh himself or anything. He just kind of took data and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna look right. And I'm like, I remember asking him, how frequently do you weigh yourself? He's like, oh, I weigh myself during the weigh-in, like at the show, and that's kind of it. And that's how I find out. But he always showed up in shape. He always showed up looking right. You know, he was 5'9", like 175 on stage, but that didn't matter, you know? So yeah, it's a visual sport. It's an art, I think you can argue. So you almost have to learn to separate your, like when I take my progress pictures, like for data, it's like a different hat that I have to put on, because like for that, I'm like, all right, let me go through all the things that like need work, all the errors that potentially I'm making so that I can correct them. And then there's that. And then there's the other version of me that's like, oh, you know what? Pump is good. Lighting at the gym is good. Let me celebrate what I have done. So you do kind of have to balance those things a little bit. But when it comes to your data-driven pictures, like you want nothing but the truth, because that is the only way you're going to progress as efficiently as you can.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yes.
It's like they're artist versus analyst kind of in terms of how you
Yeah.
approach these, and there's a time and place for both.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a great post somewhere on our Instagram page that talks about, when you make an adjustment to your program, it's not something that's going to, happen overnight. We want to kind of commit, and, you know, we want to make sure that what we're doing is working. And a lot of times the only way you can do that in bodybuilding is to get photos and see if what you planned is actually working, because it's one thing when you're trying to improve your strength and you see a PR, and sometimes PRs will come a lot faster than actual visual changes on the physique, right? And so you kind of, you don't want to poo-poo how things look just for the sake that we're getting PRs in the gym. Because it's one thing to get PRs in the gym, but is that actually translating to what you're seeing on your physique? And Alberto, you had a great post here recently. I can't remember if it was a vlog on YouTube, but you were talking about the importance of delts and how really capped delts just make even a skinny physique look more muscular. And how many people are really blessed with good capped delts. And if we're going to do something about making better delts, okay, it's one thing to say, okay, here's the program. Here's what we're going to do. The purpose of this is to get bigger delts. By golly, we better make sure at some point that it's actually working. Because I don't know about you guys, but I've set PRs, in overhead pressing and things like that. But did I see changes in my delts? Heck, I couldn't tell you. I wasn't getting photos at the time, but I learned my lesson, and I'm doing that with our clients now. But yeah, you want to make sure that what it is that you're programming is actually having the desired effect. Because the last thing we want to do is put all that work in, not get a glance at how the physique is looking, then go through an entire prep, an entire dieting phase, only to get up on the bodybuilding stage and go, oh wow, I look the same. That would be heartbreaking.
Yeah, well, hopefully, guys, we've kind of sold you on the importance of this. I know that I used to be very, like, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to look at it because it's never going to be good enough. And I think if anything, over time, that delayed my progress a little bit. I think had I taken more frequent, I didn't have the means at the time because, cell phones were so bad. But when I went through my Dreamer bulk and I got up to 250, I think had I seen along the way, and again, this is an extreme example, dude, you just gained 20 pounds and I think you look worse. I don't think I would have made that error, but um, part of me was, again, chasing the numbers mostly, whether it was the stats or obviously the lifts are going to go up because I'm getting bigger, but I never bothered to check whether or not what I was doing was actually working the way I wanted it to work in the long term. And I think a big part of it was actual fear in mine. It's I don't want to know. I don't want to know. But at some point I had to deal with that. So it's, again, better to be proactive, just deal with what it actually is. And then I think once you see that work out for you a few times, you're just sold on the importance of extracting this sort of data. So yeah, guys, check out the course. We go through a lot of things in great detail. Everything from what sort of devices you should use to take your pictures. I think it's that important. I don't think you should have a potato phone if you really want to maximize your physique. That should be a priority. A whole host of things. So peep that. I think it would really be beneficial to people who are still trying to especially figure out what exactly works for them, because nothing will guide you like that specific set of data. If I had to pick one thing, I'd stop weighing myself. I could even stop tracking calories, but taking progress pictures, no, that's what I depend on to, keep me heading in the direction I want to head in.
What's going on, everybody? Eric Helms here, Chief Science Officer of 3DMJ. Thank you for listening to the podcast, and let me just take 1 second to tell you about MASS, Monthly Applications in Strength Sport. This is a monthly research review that I do with Lauren Colenso-Semple, Eric Trexler, as well as Mike Zerdos. These are experts in their field, and we cover all the information relevant to you as an athlete or coach if you're working with strength or physique athletes, or if you're a recreational or competitive athlete yourself. We cover nutrition, training, sports psychology, and health. And we do this in written format, as well as, since you like the podcast, audio summaries, as well as video concept reviews. If you're a trainer, we also have continuing education credits for ACSM, NSCA, NASM, and ACE. So head over to 3dmusclejourney.com, click on the products tab, and you can find us there. I look forward to seeing you, and enjoy the podcast.